Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. Watch my video and subscribe my channel. Steffy and Thomas's rage endangers Ridge's future at Forrester Creations. In Bold and the Beautiful, Thomas Forrester, Matthew Atkinson, is poised to go nuclear over Ridge Forrester's, Torsten K., decision to dump his mother. Steffy Forrester, Jacqueline McInnes Wood, returns in just a few weeks. And she'll be furious, too. I wonder if Thomas and Steffy will band together to punish their father. We'll discuss whether Thomas and his sister Steffy band together to exact some revenge on their beloved father, Ridge. And if they manage to push him out of Forrester Creations. Ridge's betrayal. Thomas confronts Brooke and Ridge's deception. Last week, when Thomas asked Ridge if he was staying with Taylor Hayes, Rebecca Budig, Ridge clearly dodged the subject. To me, that was akin to lying in front of his son when he owed him the truth. Of course, Thomas stepped in and spotted Ridge holding Brooke Logan, Catherine Kelly Lang, at Forrester Creations. Then, just as Ridge was telling Taylor he was going back to Brooke, Thomas confronted her and warned her, "Stay out of the way of my parents." Instead, Brooke told Thomas that Ridge never proposed to Taylor and that she and Ridge enjoyed a game-changing moment in Italy together. A fact, Thomas doesn't care who proposed, Taylor or Ridge. They are getting married. He tells Brooke to back off. Of course, she is not going to. Meanwhile, Taylor tried to resist Ridge's rejection of her. Taylor was raving about Brooke's tendency to do filthy things, but he stuck to his guns. He is going to go ahead and officially end things with Taylor. Worse, it appears that Ridge flees and nearly immediately proposes to Brooke. I noticed a behind-the-scenes photo of Catherine Kelly Lang. She was wearing her Brooke costume. She wore a large gem on her ring finger, which appears to match this week's spoilers. Of course, when Ridge proposes, she will say yes. And I bet she'll attempt to get Ridge down the aisle as quickly as possible. Steffy's return and the emerging family conflict. Spoilers suggest Steffy returned in time for Ridge's wedding, but it appears Steffy planned to attend as the bride's daughter to her mother, Taylor, rather than as the angry ex-partner. Bottom line, no matter how Ridge attempts to defend his conduct, Thomas and Steffy will be furious with their father. This might be disastrous for Ridge and Brooke. By the way, also for Eric Forrester, John McCook, who encouraged Ridge to return to Brooke and dump Taylor. So, I believe Steffy and Thomas are equally disillusioned with their grandfather, Eric. Of course, Steffy and Thomas will be there to comfort their mother, Taylor. But will Thomas and Steffy agree that Ridge should pay? Perhaps Brooke and Eric do as well. Taylor's heartbreak and Thomas's outrage. After his unpleasant conversation with Brooke, Thomas plans to return to see Taylor, who, of course, will be devastated because she has just been discarded. Even worse, now that Ridge has abandoned her, Taylor must pack her bags and depart the Forrester estate, essentially walking in disgrace. Worse, Katie Logan, Heather Tom, and Donna Logan, Jennifer Garais, might bother Taylor on her way out. It simply sounds dreadful. When Thomas discovers Ridge has swapped fiancés and is engaged to Brooke, he will be furious. I'm sure Thomas will tell Steffy exactly what their father has done to their mother. Ridge went and broke Taylor's heart again. The emotional state of Thomas and Steffy, a recipe for revenge. We also know Thomas isn't in the best of moods right now following his breakup with Paris Buckingham, Diamond White, and the revelation that her mother was doing horrific things to Liam Spencer, Scott Clifton, which also hurt Hope Logan, Annika Noel. Of course, Steffy has left to heal after the Buckinghams tortured her with the Liam deception. Furthermore, Steffy was horrified when Liam was shot, and Luna Nozoa, Lisa Yamada, was also prepared to kill her. So she may not be in the best of moods when she returns to town. Maybe Steffy did get her mind straight, but then she hears the horrible news about Ridge and Taylor, which devastates her even more. Ridge promised Steffy when he reconciled with Taylor that he would not break her mother's heart. But Ridge has gone and done it again, running straight to Brooke. So, I fully expect Steffy and Thomas to be really irritated with their dad. Forrester Creations Is this the ultimate revenge weapon? Of course, Steffy and Thomas could try to destroy Brooke and Ridge's wedding. Perhaps they opt to hit their father where it hurts. Maybe Steffy and Thomas want to demolish Ridge, Eric, and Brooke and determine that the best way to do so is through Forrester Creations. So, what if Steffy and Thomas utilize the family business to get revenge at their father and grandfather? The last we heard, the ownership split of Forrester Creations was as follows. Ridge owns 20%, Thomas owns 5%, and he was allowing Ridge to vote his 5%, but the basic line was that it belonged to Tomas. So Ridge had 20% while Thomas had 5%. Steffy and Eric held the remaining 75% of Forrester Creations evenly. They each own 37.5% of Forrester Creations. Perfect time for Bold to switch things up. So, based on how we last heard the split, Thomas and Steffy would not be able to pull off their own coup. However, right now is the ideal time for Bold and the Beautiful to switch things up and announce that the company's ownership has changed. They can defend it by claiming that Hope and Carter Walton, Lawrence St. Victor, staged a coup, after which he took control and ran the corporation. Carter may have made a change in ownership when he returned the corporation over Hope's protests. Bold and the Beautiful may state that after Carter returned it, Eric and Ridge chose to divide it among the company's existing next generation. Ridge's 2 oldest children, Steffy and Thomas, already had ownership holdings, so perhaps they adjusted the percentages. And if Steffy and Thomas together hold more than 50%, they could wreak havoc and punish Ridge and others. Steffy and Thomas's rage threatens Ridge's future at Forrester Creations, becomes the kind of long-brewing Bold and the Beautiful firestorm that seems destined to explode into something so much larger than just Ridge breaking Taylor's heart for the 100th time, because this betrayal hits on multiple fronts. The emotional wound of Ridge humiliating Taylor yet again, the lingering trauma of both Steffy and Thomas being promised stability in their fractured family, only to have the rug ripped out from under them. The raw fury of Thomas, who not only sees his father tossing aside his mother's dignity, but also doing it with a Logan. The very family Thomas and Steffy have long accused of poisoning Forrester Creations and destabilizing their parents' bond. And then the looming return of Steffy, who left Los Angeles reeling from the chaos of Liam's shooting, Luna's pee, psychotic spiral, and her own desperate attempts to keep her marriage with Finn afloat, only to come back just in time to watch her father parade down the aisle with Brooke as though Taylor never mattered. And it is this convergence of timing, betrayal, and pent-up sibling anger that could spark what fans are calling a possible Forrester coup storyline where Thomas and Steffy unite not only to punish Ridge personally, but to cut him down professionally by threatening his place at Forrester Creations itself, because while the emotional wounds sting, nothing would devastate Ridge more than being told by his own children that he no longer has power in the company that defines him, the company that Eric and Stephanie built, the company he has lived and bled for. And so the speculation spirals as spoilers hint that Steffy will indeed return right as Ridge prepares to marry Brooke, giving us the daughter of the jilted bride perspective, because Steffy will not only be furious for her mother, but also for herself, since Ridge gave her his word he would never hurt Taylor again, and Steffy never forgave him for choosing Brooke over her family the first time. So imagine her fury when she realizes Ridge has repeated history. Only worse this time because Taylor had allowed herself to fully believe his commitment was real, while Thomas meanwhile spirals further into a vengeful state of mind. Still emotionally destabilized by his failed relationship with Paris, his guilt over his role in previous Brooke Taylor dramas, and his seething hatred of the Logan women he sees as manipulative destroyers of his family. And when he confronts Brooke at Forrester Creations, warning her to stay out of the way of his parents, only to have her smugly declare that Ridge never truly committed to Taylor, it lights a fire inside him that could easily push him toward extreme action, especially once Steffy is back and the siblings are feeding off each other's outrage, because Steffy has always been the strategic one, the chess player who knows how to manipulate shares, boards, and family votes. while Thomas is the passionate one, willing to torch relationships if it means revenge. So together they are more dangerous than Ridge could ever imagine. And here's where the numbers matter. Steffy and Eric have long held the largest chunks of Forrester creations at 37.5% each. Ridge has 20% and Thomas has 5%, but with Thomas no longer willing to let Ridge vote his 5% and with Steffy having every reason to ally with her brother, that's 42.5% united against Ridge's 20% and Eric's 37.5%. And while on paper that doesn't give them a majority, soaps are notorious for shifting the ownership percentages in convenient ways. So if the writers decide to rewrite history and claim that Carter's coup and subsequent handoff resulted in new shares being distributed, suddenly Steffy and Thomas could control a majority, which means Ridge could find himself outmaneuvered, outvoted, and even ousted. As co-CEO, a shocking but juicy storyline that would echo the earlier days when Ridge and Rick battled for control. Only now it's Ridge versus his own children, the same children he betrayed by humiliating their mother. And the emotional stakes are off the charts because it's not just about money or power. It's about punishment, about Thomas and Steffy sending the message that Ridge can't shatter Taylor's dignity and walk away unscathed, about reclaiming Forrester Creations as a company for the Forresters rather than the Logans, about rewriting the destiny Ridge always tries to script for everyone. And with spoilers hinting Brooke is flaunting her new engagement ring in behind-the-scenes photos. The timing lines up perfectly for a wedding disruption, a boardroom coup, and a family implosion that could pit father against children, grandfather against grandchildren, and Brooke against the entire Forrester next generation. While Taylor herself is caught in the middle, humiliated yet again, but perhaps quietly encouraging her children's anger, because for once it is Ridge, not her, who might be on the losing end of a brutal power play, and the fallout would be seismic. Ridge stripped of influence, Brooke humiliated at the altar or in the boardroom, Eric forced to choose between his loyalty to Ridge and the undeniable logic of Steffy and Thomas, and Taylor finally given the satisfaction of watching Ridge pay a price for the decades of betrayal, all while fans debate whether this is the ultimate moment when the next generation takes full control of Forrester Creations and whether Ridge, so often untouchable, could actually be written into a corner where his legacy crumbles not because of an external rival, but because his own children decided enough was enough. And the more that builds on this saga is that once Steffy storms back into Los Angeles, she won't just be angry at Ridge for betraying Taylor. She'll also be disgusted with Eric for manipulating Ridge into choosing Brooke again. Because Steffy has always seen Eric as a patriarch blinded by nostalgia for Brooke, unable to see the damage she leaves behind. And so Steffy's return isn't just about defending Taylor. It's about reclaiming the Forrester name from what she sees as the Logan infestation. And that means rallying Thomas into a united front where they both refuse to back down even when Ridge tries to soften the blow with his typical, "You know I love you. You're my children. This is complicated excuses." But this time Thomas and Steffy won't listen because they're tired of Ridge using love as a shield while he hurts their mother over and over. And when Thomas finds out about Ridge's lightning-fast proposal to Brooke, the sense of betrayal boils into rage so potent that it practically dares him to sabotage the wedding. Yet Steffy, sharper and more calculating after her time away, sees a bigger picture, punishing Ridge not in the chapel but in the boardroom, stripping him of the thing he loves most besides Brooke, control of Forrester Creations. And suddenly what started as a family argument escalates into a corporate civil war where Steffy and Thomas begin whispering to shareholders, allies, and even Carter about how Ridge is unstable, untrustworthy, and too entangled with Brooke to put the company first. And the irony is staggering because Ridge has spent decades painting Thomas as the unstable one. But now Thomas and Steffy may actually have the leverage, especially if ownership percentages are shifted or if Thomas formally reclaims his 5% from Ridge's proxy vote, tipping the balance toward the children and away from their father. And imagine the drama if Steffy and Thomas call an emergency board meeting during Ridge and Brooke's wedding week, blindsiding Ridge with emotion of no confidence, citing his personal distractions, his betrayal of Taylor, and his failure to unify the family. And suddenly the wedding bells are drowned out by the echoes of a corporate coup, with Brooke standing horrified as her shiny new engagement ring becomes a symbol of Ridge's downfall rather than triumph. And even more tension explodes when Eric is forced to take sides. Because, while he always leans Brooke's way, he cannot deny that Steffy has proven herself as CEO, that Thomas has shown design brilliance, and that perhaps the next generation deserves control. But siding with them means betraying Ridge, and Eric has never been good at telling Ridge no. So the potential fracture lines deepen across generations, with Taylor quietly encouraging her children's rebellion because for once she doesn't have to beg Ridge to love her. Her children are making Ridge pay in a way Taylor never could, and even Hope and Brooke get pulled into the fallout because Hope will see Thomas reverting to obsessive, vengeful patterns, raising questions about whether he's truly changed, while Brooke, ever the fighter, will insist that Steffy and Thomas are overstepping and that Ridge deserves respect as co-CEO. But those arguments may not matter if the voting percentages don't fall in her favor. And that's where things get truly soap-delicious, because the numbers can shift however the writers want. Maybe Carter reveals that the paperwork after his previous coup actually altered the shares. Maybe Quinn secretly left something behind that changed ownership. Maybe even Zend or Bridget pops in with a forgotten clause, and suddenly Steffy and Thomas hold majority power, enough to formally oust Ridge and humiliate him publicly, which would be the ultimate revenge, not just because it punishes him for breaking Taylor's heart, but because it undermines his legacy at the company he thought would always be his sanctuary, and the cascading fallout would ripple everywhere. Taylor would feel vindicated at last, Brooke would feel besieged, Eric would feel betrayed by his grandchildren, Hope would feel trapped between loyalty to her mother and lingering trust in Thomas. Finn would feel torn between supporting Steffy's fury and trying to keep her grounded. And even Bill might see an opening to swoop in with Spencer Publications if Forrester Creations fractures. While Sheila, always lurking, could exploit the chaos to worm her way closer to Finn and Hayes, and the entire Forrester family could find itself on the brink of collapse, not because of outside enemies, but because Steffy and Thomas finally said enough, finally refused to let Ridge dictate destiny, finally turned their anger into action, and in doing so forced everyone in Los Angeles to confront a chilling truth, that the greatest threat to Ridge Forrester's future isn't a Logan, a Spencer, or even a Carter, but the very children he thought he was protecting when he claimed to be following his heart, and that is the kind of Shakespearean, cyclical, family-devouring drama that Bold and the Beautiful thrives on, ensuring months of boardroom battles, family screaming matches, ruined weddings, and shifting alliances, because in the end the question won't just be whether Ridge loses Brooke or Taylor, but whether Ridge loses everything, including the one thing he never thought his children would dare to touch, his throne at Forrester Creations. And the escalation grows because Brooke, flushed with triumph at Ridge's sudden proposal, begins parading her engagement ring around Forrester like a queen reclaiming her throne, convinced that this is finally her destiny realized. But her gloating only fuels Steffy's fury when she returns, because Steffy never intended to come back as the daughter of a discarded bride. She was coming home expecting to stand beside Taylor as Ridge's fiancé, so when she discovers her father betrayed her mother again, her rage is volcanic, and instead of tears she channels it into strategy, locking arms with Thomas and declaring war not only on Ridge, but on Brooke as well. And the first strike comes when Steffy storms into a Brooke Ridge wedding planning session, announcing flatly that neither she nor Thomas will attend, and that if Ridge insists on humiliating Taylor, then he should prepare for humiliation himself. And though Ridge tries to soothe her with platitudes, Steffy calls him a liar who broke his word to her, reminding him that he promised never to crush Taylor's heart again, and this time she won't forgive him. And then Thomas adds gasoline to the fire by revealing he has already reclaimed his 5% voting rights at Forrester, telling Ridge that his days of puppeteering are over. And while Ridge scoffs, Brooke starts to panic because she knows that if Steffy aligns with Thomas, they're formidable, especially since Eric has been faltering health-wise and might not have the strength to withstand a full-on boardroom rebellion. But Brooke doubles down, telling Steffy and Thomas they're acting like spoiled children, trying to punish their father for following his heart, which only enrages them more because from their perspective, Brooke has no heart, just an endless appetite for Ridge, no matter how much collateral damage she leaves behind. And the irony of Brooke claiming the moral high ground infuriates Steffy to the point where she vows not just to block the wedding, but to remove Ridge from power altogether.